Thank you so much for joining us today for the third episode of Black Writers Read, the series. My name is Christopher J. Sparks. The date is October the 10th, 2020, and I'll be serving as the host for today's conversation. Black Writers Read is a creation of Nicole M. Young, who pretty much does everything for the project, including production, social media scripting, and outreach to Black readers to be featured on the program for Valley Society. Valley Society is a writing and social group for Black writers located in the Pioneer Valley in Western Massachusetts. We hold private monthly meetings to discuss current events, upcoming opportunities, writing project, and to offer each other support. Valley Society is supported through the blessings and generosity of Stardog Writers Guild. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Each month from this Facebook page, we will broadcast live an episode that will feature an invited author who will share some of their work and then engage in a brief discussion about their work. Today's featured author will share their work, and I will convene a discussion where we'll talk more about their work and scope as a writer. At the end of our chat, we'll open it up to our viewers for a brief question and answer session. If you come up with a question during our conversation, please feel free to type it in the comments, and we'll be sure to address it at the appropriate time. Now on today's guest, Fungai Tichawangana is a writer, journalist, and web developer who lives in Western Massachusetts. He builds websites that help promote the work of artists. His latest project is Valley of Writers, a site that celebrates and documents the rich literary history in this part of the country. His poetry and fiction are inspired by the promises that the world makes to young people and the extent to which those promises are fulfilled. Please join me in welcoming Fungai to Black Writers Read.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for that introduction. Thank you to Valley Society for hosting this series and for having me read today. Thanks to everyone who's joining us, who's making the time to be here to listen, and hopefully to chat, to have a discussion about the work, about writing afterwards. So I'm going to read from a collection of short stories that I'm working on, which is about foreign students navigating Western Massachusetts. So it's a fictional series. I'll read a bit, and I'll read from three of the stories, extracts from three of the stories, and then talk about the idea behind this collection before I move to the next one. All right, so the first story is called To Love a Country. Now, by the way, I did promise people wine, so I have 2 drinks when you see me sipping from the water, because I need relief. When you see me sipping from this glass, it could be in anything. My favorite singer as a teenager was a pop star called Miley Cyrus. Haley was telling us. You all probably never heard of her. Oh, Miley of Cheetah Girls fame, Nandi chimed in as she tried to get the Bluetooth speaker to connect to her phone. Cheetah Girls? Haley looked puzzled. I meant Miley of Hannah Montana fame. Same person, Nandi said. My sister used to listen to her all the time. Hannah Montana's band was called the Cheetah Girls. Haley shot Nandi a stunned look. How do you know so much about America? You always make me feel like I'm only just starting to learn about my own country. I don't know. I just love this country, Nandi said, ramming her thumb repeatedly into what looked like a button on the side of the speaker. So do I, said Haley, but you've only been here 3 months. 4, said Nandi. I came a month before the semester started, just in case I got mistakenly deported again. Stop messing with me. You know what I mean. Ah, there we go. Connection. This is Ja Praiser, one of the biggest artists out of Zimbabwe in the last decade. Ah, love this song. Haley was looking at her expectantly. I was taught to love America, Nandi finally responded. When I was 11 years old, I was taught to love America. Maybe even before that. But when I was 11, my family got a TV and brought America into our home. She reached for her phone and lowered the volume. Bibi and Haley were all ears. I was taught to love America by the A-Team, MacGyver, WWE, and Days of Our Lives. I was taught to dream of the possibilities in this country by Oprah, by Michael Jackson, by Will Smith, Whitney Houston, and Luther Vandross. They played all that on Zimbabwean TV? Yep. Most of our shows were American. Most of the music on the main urban radio station was American. When I was a child, my uncle told me that the streets in New York were made of gold, and I believed him. I wanted so badly to come here, to speak like Oprah, to dance like Usher, and to be rich like every Black American I knew of at the time. So this story and this collection was inspired by the realization of how American culture is so much a part of the social fabric of so many people, so many lives around the world. Right. In my work as a journalist, I got to travel to different countries, and wherever I met young people, it was amazing how even if we didn't have anything else in common, the one thing we could talk about was American music, American films. And then the first time I came to America, I had people explaining things to me, earnestly explaining things to me. So, for instance, they would talk about, they would mention Bruce Springsteen in conversation, and then stop to explain to me that Bruce Springsteen was this big music star, or that Reagan was a reference to an American president, which is fair enough, right? And so I realized that there were two phenomena at play here. One was this proliferation of American culture and media around the world, but another was the lack of realization by all the Americans I met, at least, about how deep their culture had permeated the rest of the world. And so I wanted to write a story that showed this. And it became 2 stories and 3. And I figured out that the best way to do it would be to create this character who had not been exposed to American culture at all, who had somehow escaped American music, American movies. And this culture was from Zimbabwe. But there was nowhere in Zimbabwe where you can find a young person like that. So I had to create a fictional place within the country. And then I figured, okay, if you have this young woman coming to America and she's totally ignorant of the American culture, of American media, it still doesn't show this phenomena. So there needs to be another young woman coming from the same country who is, like a lot of other young people, well versed in a lot of elements of American culture. So these 2 girls come from Zimbabwe, and they land in Massachusetts, and they're studying at the same university. One is the worldly one who knows about American culture, about the world. The other has never been exposed to it. And so this started off as 1 story, then became 2, and then 3. So that was an excerpt from the first one. I'll read from another story. This one is called Welcome Home. And so this is Nandi, the worldly Zimbabwean, she's gone back home. Because I felt to be important to show these characters in their normal environments. You lost Aunt Mabel's hip? Mom glares at me, totally aghast. No, I didn't, I say defensively. The suitcase is just delayed. The connection time in Dubai was so short that they didn't manage to transfer it onto the Harare flight. It will arrive tomorrow. You lost Aunt Mabel's hip? Mom repeats, almost in a trance. Mom, Kira interjects. It's not lost. You just heard her explain. It's not lost. Why did you check it in? Mom asks. You should have just put it in your carry-on luggage. After what happened to the first hip, you'd think one would be more careful. I didn't have space, Mom, I shoot back. I had 2 laptops for Bruce, a camera for Angela, my own laptop, and how big is a damn hip? Mom yells. I'm sure you could have put it into your purse. Stop it, you two, Kira says. And Mom, stop calling it a hip. Well, that's what it is, isn't it? Now we have 2 hips floating around the world somewhere. How on earth do you lose 2 whole hips? It's not her fault, Mom. Kira comes in again. The first one got lost in the mail. The stove timer goes off, and she pulls the mitt of the hook and whips open the oven door. Instantly, waves of banana bread fill the room, and I am transported back to childhood, but only for a moment. I can't believe you would do something so reckless, Nandi, Mom says as she sticks a knitting needle into the bread. I head over to the door, grab my backpack, and yank my suitcase onto its wheels. What are you doing? Kira asks. I'm going to find somewhere I can stay where I will be more welcome. Mom turns, dough-covered needle in her hand. As she pushes the oven door shut, she shrugs. Well, that's your call, darling. Go, see if I care. Kira gasps. I'm already halfway to the door. Mom, say something, stop her, Kira pleads, behind me. But my mom doesn't respond. When I'm in the driveway, I realize I can't really go anywhere without transport, and my phone doesn't work here, so I can't call a taxi. But I'm not turning back now. I head for the gate. George, the gardener, is standing there looking confused. I have just arrived. As I get closer, he hesitantly unlatches the pedestrian gate and swings it open. I hear footsteps behind me. I won't look back. Nandi! It's Mom. I don't respond and step out. Nandi, come back, will you? I'm still walking. Please, Nandi. I'm still walking. The sun is low on the horizon. The street is deserted, except for a couple standing at the corner chatting. Nandi, I beg you, come home. I shouldn't have said what I said. I stop and turn as I get to the corner. I cancelled all my plans, Mom, to come here and bring that hip over. I get here after 2 days of traveling, and you can't even be happy that I'm home. Kira walks up to us and stops behind Mom. I'm just so anxious, Nandi, Mom responds. Mabel's operation is the day after tomorrow, and even though they can't find a hip for her, they are still charging us all this money. I wish you hadn't decided to leave this trip until the last minute. I can't believe you just said that, Mom. You keep blaming me at every turn. The couple at the corner has stopped chatting. Okay, I made a mistake and in my rush packed the damn hip in the wrong bag. It wasn't on purpose. Why would you make me feel like I did it on purpose? Okay, I'm sorry. Please come home. I need to go and check on my banana bread. She turns and leaves. Kira reaches for my backpack and I let her take it. For the record, Kira says as we start walking back, I think you're totally badass. I wouldn't know where to start looking for hip replacement parts. The wonders of the internet, I reply. All you need is a credit card and Alibaba.com. So that's all I read from that story. So that's Nandi, one of the characters at home, and I'll read from one more story. This one's called "Smells Unfamiliar." So these 2 girls, they share these 2 Zimbabwean girls studying in this unnamed university in Massachusetts. They share a room with an American girl, and her name is Haley, and she's the one who they were talking to in the first story about Miley Cyrus and American culture. And this is another story featuring the 3 of them. Can you smell that? Haley asks, her face contorting into a mask of pain. No, Bibi responds without looking up. At that moment, Nandi comes in. Have either of you done the Stats 104 assignment? Haley crumples to the floor and Bibi leaps up. Haley, are you okay? Haley's half crawling towards the door, holding her nose. Then she takes a deep breath. Oh my God, she gasps. It's happening again. It's happening again. What? What's happening? Nandi asks. Are you okay? Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Haley's pounding on the door, still on her knees. Nandi leaps over and flings the door open. Haley leaps to her feet and makes a dash down the hall out into the quad. When they catch up with her, she is seated on the grass, looking totally spent. Nandi kneels beside her. Are you okay, Haley? Should I call 911? No, don't. I'm fine. It's gone. What was it? Bibi joins them on the grass. Haley looks as though she might break down. I didn't think it would happen here. It's followed me all the way across the country to freaking Amherst. Bibi and Nandi exchange glances. What has followed you, Haley? There's an extended silence. If I tell you, Haley finally says, promise me you won't tell anyone else? They nod. Haley looks around and in a low voice lets them into her secret. About a year before this, she was having dinner with her family when she smelt it. Like a mix of rotten fish and other pongy things, it just descended upon her and was so bad that she immediately threw up onto her father who was sitting next to her. The problem was that no one else had smelt it. The incident was quickly forgotten, but strange things started happening. She dropped her 1-year-old brother when the smell hit her while she was carrying him. In the same week, she totaled her mother's car when the smell sent her careening out of control on the highway. Once, it came when she was out on a date. Then another time when she was at a funeral and went racing out of the church screaming, "Can you smell it? Can anybody else smell it?" But nobody else ever could. It was just her. Her parents took her to see doctors and therapists. Her mother secretly took her to see a pastor at a church she used to attend as a younger woman, and he had prayed over Haley and anointed her with oils. But the smell returned, even as the pastor was in the middle of explaining how powerful his holy oils were. And the amazing conclusion, after tens of thousands of dollars in medical and therapy bills, was that Haley was acting up to seek attention. Her father had decided that the problem was that they had spoiled her and given her everything she had ever wanted. He was angry that instead of being grateful, she was repaying them with these antics of madness. So he sent her away to the furthest college they could get her into so that she could grow up and get some perspective on life. For a while, the smells had disappeared, but now they were back. I don't know what to do, Haley sighed. I think I may be going mad. I am going mad, and I can't even call my family to tell them. Wow, that's quite a story, Haley. Haley looked at Bibi, then at Nandi, squinted her eyes. You also think I'm mad, right? I think I must just die. No, no, not at all, Bibi said. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, said Nandi. I know, I shouldn't have told you. I should have just kept it to myself. Is it always the same smell? I think so. I don't know. It just varies in intensity. I guess sometimes it's a little whiff of it. Other times it's like a barrel of it has been pumped into my lungs. Said Bibi. Said Nandi. So here's the thing, Haley continued. I've been doing some research and there's this woman in Hadley. I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm desperate here and nothing else has worked. Her roommates nodded. Haley continued. This woman, she's a seer. A what? Bibi asked. A seer. She sees stuff, like, a medium? Nandi raised her eyebrows. A medium? Really? Okay, forget I said it. I knew it was a bad idea. Tell us more, Nandi prods. Bibi's mouth is hanging slightly open. Well, I heard that she helps people, with spiritual problems. You think you have a spiritual problem? Bibi sounds incredulous. Stop looking at me like I'm mad. I'm just trying things here. I need to do something. This thing is going to kill me, and nobody's taking me seriously. We are taking you seriously, Nandi said. Bibi glared at Nandi. So, this woman? Yes, I want to go and visit her and, see if she can help. Haley, I'm not so sure about that, said Bibi. Why not? Nandi asked, trying to calm an aghast Bibi by making small up and down movements with her hand. Because, Nandi, said Bibi, unmoved by the gesture, just because. What's the worst that could happen? It'll be an adventure, and if there's a chance it will work, hell yeah, do it, Haley. I can't tell if you're serious right now, said Bibi. I'm dead serious, Bibi. Did you see Haley flying out of the dome just then? Well, I want nothing to do with it. Mediums freak me out. Both Nandi and Haley turned to Bibi. Say what? I'm not coming. Not that, said Nandi. You've had an experience with mediums? Anyway, forget it. Haley, when do you want to go and see this woman? Rosetta McGinnis lived on one of those farms in Hadley that have this feeling of being deep in the middle of nowhere when they are 5 minutes from malls, coffee shops, and the biggest university campus in western Massachusetts. The driveway to the farmhouse ran through a woodlot, over a brook, and past some untended fields. As Nandi and Haley drove up, a young woman who was maybe 25 emerged from what must have once been a grand home, but whose halls had not seen paint or repairs in maybe 50 years. Nandi and Haley introduced themselves. Nice to meet you. My name is Scarlett, said the woman. Grandma is expecting you. Come in. She led them into a mudroom that lived up to its name with every exposed surface. Even the windows were so soiled by years of dust that curtains would have been an unnecessary addition. Please leave your shoes, bags, and phones here, Scarlett said. Haley shot a nervous glance at Nandi. They'll be safe, Scarlett assured. Follow me. They found themselves in a large living room, where a brown and white chicken was perched on the arm of one of the two easy chairs that were positioned facing each other at the far end. A little side table stood next to one of the chairs. The rest of the room was bare and threadbare. Another chicken strutted in and walked round the holes in the carpet towards the chairs. I'll go and check if Gran is ready for you, said Scarlett. Take seats. She shooed the chickens out and left. It smells of 1885 in here, said Haley. Nandi, who was examining the easy chairs, missed this attempt at humor. I'm going to stand, she said. You're right, me too. Scarlett was back. Okay, Gran is ready. A few instructions before we go in. Haley stepped forward and nodded. Once we go inside, please be quiet and speak only when spoken to. And note that until she's made a diagnosis, Gran won't talk to you directly. She'll speak through me. Through you? Yes, I'll translate the things she sees into words. Nandi moved to stand next to Haley. What sort of racket are you? Haley held her hand to silence her. It's okay, Haley said. We understand. Great, said Scarlett. In terms of payment, sometimes Grant's treatments take a few visits, and you only need to pay when she's made a diagnosis. Haley nodded. Can you give me an idea of how much it will be? It depends, but it starts at $300. Starts at 300? Nandi asked. Yes, Gran is very good at what she does. People come here from all over the world. Starts at 300? Nandi repeated. That's fine, said Haley. Great, said Scarlett. You can follow me. She pointed to Haley. Just you. No, said Haley. She needs to come with me. Scarlett stopped, looked at Nandi, then nodded. She led them into a corridor, past a desk where a diary sat open, and into a dim room with no furniture and a heavy aroma of incense. An old woman sat cross-legged on the floor. Scarlett motioned to some cushions. Please, she said, hiking her skirt up slightly so she could sit next to her grandma. When they were all settled, Scarlett gestured towards Haley. Gran, this is Haley. She's here to seek your help. Go ahead, Haley. Tell Gran what the problem is. Haley nodded, cleared her throat, and began. Rosetta McGinnis did not budge as she listened. When Haley was done, the old woman took out 3 blank white cards and placed them on the floor in front of her. She wants you to choose one, said Scarlett, but don't touch it, just point. Haley looked at the cards, then at Nandi, who was looking totally unimpressed with this whole scene, then back at the cards. She pointed to the one on the left. Rosetta picked it up and turned it over. It still looked blank as far as Nandi and Haley could tell. Rosetta's face lit up, showing emotion for the first time. Scarlett's face lit up too. Nandi and Haley sat up, curious. A little cackle came forth from Rosetta's lips. Was she crying or laughing? Haley leaned forward. Scarlett was staring at her grandma, totally bemused. Before they could understand what was happening, Rosetta was laughing so hard she had to lie down on the floor. Her little hunched body came alive with spasms of mirth, and then seemed as if to struggle for life as she gasped for breath in between howls of laughter. What's happening? Haley asked. What's so funny? Scarlett raised a hand to silence her. Nandi looked bemused now and slightly concerned about the old woman's state, but Rosetta wouldn't stop laughing. and I'll end it there. And that's a reading.
Wonderful storytelling. Thank you so much for sharing that. Especially as someone who's from the Valley and might know people who resemble those characters, that was really excellent description. I really enjoyed that. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about your work. And I'd like to start from the beginning, right? When would you say that words really first called to you? Like your earliest experience of writing, the moment that you realized that words could matter to you or to other people?
When I was 12 years old, I wrote the first story that a teacher hadn't asked me to write. So a story that I just sat down and started writing. And it was a story about a young American boy who solved mysteries. Because I had been reading a lot of The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and The Three Investigators by Alfred Hitchcock. And and this just, I think, serves to illustrate the point that that inspired this collection of stories about how about the permeation of American influence around the world. Right. At that point, I had never read a book, a novel about Zimbabwe. Right.
Mhm.
My father had this book of Shona fables that he'd read to us as children. But besides that, all the books that we read in school were about even when I was in elementary school, grade 1, grade 2, and we're reading books about Jane and Bob and Mike, not about Chipo and Tendai and Zimbabwean characters. And so when I wrote that first story and those first stories, in my mind, this is what books were meant to be. You wrote about young kids in America solving mysteries. And then when I was I think I was 16, I read actually before that, when I was 14, school, we had a set book that was sent to us, coming of the dry season by a Zimbabwean writer called Charles Mungoshi. It was a collection of short stories, and I was just blown away. I was like, oh wow, this is set in Zimbabwe, and these stories are interesting. Then when I was 16, I read Titi Dangarembo's Nervous Conditions, and the idea of what a story could be, what writing could be, started changing in my mind at that time.
Wow, that's very meaningful. And I, of course, hadn't considered the possibility of not growing up with texts that reference the place you're from, because I'm from Northampton. So, endless words about us, from us. What would you say is your task with words? What do we expect of ourselves and from ourselves as culture contributors and commenters?
I think, given what's happening, all the things that happen in the world, we have a responsibility for truth. Right? I think even when you write fiction and you create these worlds, but even those characters have to obey the rules of that world. Even when they're being disobedient, there's certain rules they have to live by. Otherwise, your story doesn't ring true for your readers. And when there was a time when I would have written a story that was not true to who I am, because I thought, oh, you know what? It has to be American. It has to have American characters. But now I know that it can. It doesn't have to, right? but there are all these other characters, all the other places that I'm so much more familiar with, and I want to write about those characters. I want to write about how those characters and those places intersect with other places I've been to and characters from other worlds. So I think that's a very strong responsibility with our words.
Excellent. So what does it mean then to create as a Black writer, especially in the time of Black Lives Matter?
You know, I've lived in Amherst now for 2 years, and I have never been aware of my Blackness as much as I am now. Right? Of course, I knew I was Black, right? But I didn't walk around thinking about it. Like, oh, I'm Black. Oh, I'm Black, right? But now, I'll give you an example. I was driving the other day, and approaching a green light, and it turns yellow. And my wife next to me says, "Oh, you can go through. You can go through. You can make it." I step on the brakes and I stop. She looks at me. She's like, "You could have made it." I'm like, I'm a Black man driving in America. I am not trying to get on any policeman's radar, right? I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible, because I am just, without even trying to, you cannot avoid just being aware of it, right? And another example is I like to take photos. And so I'll just take my camera and walk out, and the best times will be early in the morning or late at night.
Yep.
And the other day I was in Northampton, and I think it was like 9, 10. The streets were quite empty. And I was walking around just taking photos, and suddenly thought, oh wow, this is I need to not look suspicious here, because someone might call the cops on me, right? And it may have been an unfounded fear, but when you keep on reading about Black men going out jogging and then getting shot, it sticks with you, and you have to be careful. And my wife says to me, be careful, right? Because even though we live in quite a safe place, we're in America, and these things are happening in America. So that affects me, right, in so many ways. And I think even in my writing, I'm very conscious of that now.
Excellent. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. And so in your writing, the role and work of your protagonist, what would you say that you owe them? And what's the role of the antagonist in your stories as well? And what do you owe them?
There was a time when I thought that the protagonist had to carry some sort of moral story, some sort of moral teaching, that the story had to be didactic. But when you start writing, oftentimes you find that the protagonist wants to go in their own direction. The story unfolds as you write it. Someone once said that I never know what I want to write until I sit down and start writing it. And that is so true. Sometimes you sit down and write, and then when you're reading over it, you're like, oh wow, I didn't know that this is what I had in me. This is the story that was trying to come out. And so I think we owe it to our protagonists to let them carry the story, to let them decide where the story is going to go. And the antagonist, I think, serves to just, if you're telling a story and the protagonist has an easy time of everything, there is no story, right? So the protagonist needs hurdles, needs challenges to overcome, needs people who stand in the way of what they're trying to do, right? And if you don't have that, then where's the story? So I think that the antagonist serves to create that excitement, to help drive the story forward.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about your fiction. Let's turn to journalism. And why would you say that you've you've chosen journalism as a form of expression?
Huh. I, I don't think I chose journalism. And with all these things, right? I don't think you choose them. I don't think we choose them. I think you choose to take it up, but these things that just rise up inside you and ask to be done, and then you decide whether or not to do them. So with journalism, when I first started designing websites, um, we do websites for companies, and most companies wanted a site that was it was in the days of brochure websites, just about us, our products, contact us.
Yep.
And we've done 10, 15, 20 of these. It gets mind-numbingly boring because it's the same thing over and over and over again, right? And so I designed with a few other young people, and we said, hey, let's build a website that really challenges us. A site that, that time I wanted to build a business website that would carry business news. And we started building this, and I just loved that experience of telling, putting stories online. And um, at some point, we started doing work for another company that was running a lifestyle portal, and we were doing the content for them. And I enjoyed that so much, especially the arts and culture part, that a few years later, we started our own arts and culture website. And I just took to it. I don't know why. And I was just drawn to it so strongly. And I've done that since then.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me about your poetry and how it differs from journalism. Um, I know that both of us write poetry, and I wonder if we've encountered similar limitations in between your poetry and your journalism and my poetry and history. One is the examination of collective memory, and one is the history of collective memory as it happens, I think.
Interesting analysis. One of the things I loved when I started journalism was that I always found myself in front of different people. I met new people all the time. Right, there was a time in Zimbabwe when we were running Zimbo Jam, when every single day of the week we'd be covering an event, doing an interview, and I just loved that. So the journalism brought that, like this exposure to people, meeting of new people all the time, exposure to ideas, and at some point, a special evening for me was an evening inside, an evening when I didn't go out because I was going out so much, and it was all work, but it was interesting, it was fun. And I think poetry gives me that. It's quiet time, it's introspection, it's not being forced to work to a deadline. I think it's just tuning into a different frequency.
Fascinating. So who do you hope will read your work, and what would you hope that they learn from it?
I'm hoping that a lot of young Zimbabweans, a lot of young Africans read my work, so that, like me, they also have an awareness of how writing doesn't just have to be about other places. And I know now there's a lot more exposure to African writing. There are a lot more African writers than there were when I was in school. So I'm hoping that they read my work, but I'm also hoping that young people who are not from Zimbabwe, not from Africa, young and older people of all ages, read the work, because just as I've been exposed to other cultures and other worlds through reading work by writers from different countries, I am hoping to expose people to my influences, my culture, my background, and the things that are important to me, the things that have shaped my life and the life of of Zimbabweans as a people.
Interesting. I think that's great. I wonder if every writer writes to their family that they know, whether it's their family of friends or the country of friends that they are from. But you've come at a particular moment in American history, and that's the moment of the ongoing conversation between the audacious suggestion that Black Lives Matter, as it's being shouted against the projectiles and poverty and prison that is the infrastructure of imperial white supremacy. So in that conversation, as someone from Zimbabwe, as someone who's visited here for 2 years yet, what strikes you particularly?
Yeah, the promise of America. In one of the stories, I spoke about how this young woman speaks about how she was taught to love America. And when you're growing up as a young, when I was growing up, talk about myself as a young Black person in Zimbabwe, the Black people I was exposed to from America were the successful ones, right? Every so often you'd, see coverage about the slave trade, etc., and you think, okay, that's history. But the picture that you got, right, when you watched Fresh Prince of Bel Air and Bill Cosby and his family on TV, and all the successful Black people, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, and Oprah, is that, oh wow, this truly is a place where there's equal opportunity for all.
Mm.
And when you come here and you realize, oh, as you grow older, and even before you come here, you realize, oh, that's not true. There's still a lot that needs to be done, right? But you think, okay, fine. The hope is that America and Americans are making an earnest effort to do that, to reach that change. Because when I was in Zimbabwe, and our government did things, right, even now, right, abuse of human rights, etc., etc., because the Americans were first to speak up that this is wrong. You need to fix it, right? Everyone has rights, right? Everyone deserves to be treated in this way, right? And to then realize that, hey, but wait a minute, there are still whole groups of people who not only see the injustice, not only don't see the injustices, but see that they don't exist here. It's a betrayal of sort of the promise that was handed to us as young people, seeing America from the outside. And so I think it's just, for me, still navigating it, trying to understand why is it so hard to see that, right? How when something keeps on happening over and over again, like Black men being shot by cops, is it so hard to admit that, okay, there's a problem here, right? As an individual, you may not know what the problem is, but just admit, okay, there's a problem and it needs to be fixed. Yeah.
Excellent. My last question is, what do you got next? Anything that's coming, anything that's going to be released, and of course, how best can people support you?
So in June, I launched a site called Valley of Writers, which was inspired by all the writers who live in Western Massachusetts, the books that come out of here. It was the beta version. Now I'm working on on beta 2 of that site. Launch that relaunch that in a few weeks' time. And in terms of support, I'd love to hear from other writers here internationally. Love to get articles for the site. You have to have people who can contribute in whatever way to the project, whether it's helping the project develop content, bring a team together. I'm trying to get some interns to work with the project to do research. So a number of areas they can help. And I'm also working on this collection of stories and a novel, which I'm doing the 4th draft now. And earlier in the year, I was just feeling like, oh man, I have to do 4th draft. I have to do a 4th draft. This is just so much work. And then I listened to Jasmine Ward when she came to Amherst College for LitFest. For LitFest, and she was talking about how she did 16 drafts of Sing and Buried Sing. So I was like, okay, I haven't even started. I'll happily do a 4th draft. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A now. If you have any questions for us, please type in the comments and we'll address accordingly. Episodes will air live via this Facebook page on the 2nd Saturday of the month at 3 p.m., etc. First question, can you recommend any Zimbabwean poets and fiction writers to read?
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned Tsitsi Dangarembwa. I don't know if I can type them, if people can see. But
well,
yes,
say them and we'll go type them out in the post.
Okay. There's also Petina Gapa, No Violet Bulawayo, No Viorosa Chuma, poets Chirikure. There's also this writer Charles Mngoshi, Shima Chinojika, Batsirai Chigama, also among poets. There's another poet called The Curious One. Yeah, I think for now those that's a good list. A good list to start with.
Excellent, thank you. Just asking if there are any other questions. So yeah, we'll collect the names and we'll put it in the post that we embed this video in at the Valley Society website. And if they have author links or if they have books that are available, we'll include those links as well, just to make it easier for the readers.
Great.
Oh, and it doesn't look like we've got any other questions. So excellent. Of course, episodes, as I said, episodes will air on the Facebook page on the 2nd Saturday of every month. And of course, any effort of this scale comes the cost of maintaining this venture. We would love to invite you to continue on this journey with us. If you are so moved to join us on this journey, please subscribe. To do so, visit valleysociety.org or patreon.com/valleysociety. There are some incredible benefits to subscribing via Patreon, including invites to meet and greets with our guests, quarterly networking events with us and our subscribers, and autographed copies of books, CDs, and merchandise from our authors. All episodes of Black Writers Read and subsequent events will continue to be held virtually, of course. And for those who wish to support us in other ways, please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/valleysociety413. We'll be sharing information on upcoming authors and also details on other events and initiatives we'll be hosting. Thank you so much to Nicole M. Young for creating Black Writers Read and continuing to support this episode from behind the scenes, as well as Opal, of course, and of course Fungai for sharing his amazing words today and insight on your world as writers in today's society. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Until next time, make Black authors matter by sharing and supporting our work. Have a great long weekend.